And then we had a lot of news over the last few days. Ontario Airport, Arrowhead Credit Union, we talked with Shea Holmes. And of course, the thing I want to start with, MVP Job Fair. How did that go?
Right. So MVP Job Fair, it hasn't happened yet. It's happening this Saturday. And what they're going to they're expecting 1,000 people to show up for less than 100 jobs. MVP, it's interesting because they were the folks who were behind the electric vehicle pursuit a while back. They were going to make electric vehicles for a Korean firm, but that ended up falling through. They've actually gotten investors into their RV side of things, and so they've been ramping up productions to build more RVs. And they're moving from their Moreno Valley factory into space that was formerly occupied by Fleetwood Enterprises. And so that job fair that's happening on Saturday from, I believe, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. is happening at 5300 Via Ricardo in Riverside. So that's the old Fleetwood factory. And again, less than 100 jobs, but they're expecting quite a few applicants. And just based on some of the stories that we've heard about recently, they could expect even more than that. So we'll see.
And then Shea Holmes, we talked with the, he's not a CEO, I think he was a vice president, correct?
Correct, exactly. An executive from Shea Holmes spoke to us, sat down for one of our weekly Q&As. And what was interesting, though, is that he's expecting profits to return this year for his company. And that would be the first time in 2 years, because obviously they've suffered steep losses being a home builder. That seems to be a good sign if they're expecting those profits to come back.
And then Arrowhead Credit Union, sounds like the national... the feds actually had felt like they needed to defend themselves and kind of give some facts as to why they decided to move on them so quickly. It seems quite interesting that they did it because they didn't want something to close right away because they weren't sure about the value.
Right, yeah, no, it was pretty interesting because ever since the National Credit Union Administration came in and seized Arrowhead Credit Union on June 25th, obviously we've been asking questions as to why they did it and when they did it, what was the timing all about, and the communities had a lot of questions as well. And so a couple community members, including John Husing, who's an inland economist, who's also a member of Arrowhead Credit Union. And the way credit unions work is that the folks who bank with them are members of the financial institution. So if you have an account there, you're technically a member, and it's a member-owned institution. So he wrote a letter to the NCUA asking why this happened and questioning really the seizure in the first place, because a lot of folks in the community have said that they were doing pretty well, or at least improving based on how they had performed in quarters prior. And so the NCUA did respond to this letter that was, and the community letter was signed by tons of people in the community. So Mayor Pat Morris, as well as Mike Ramos, who's the DA out in San Bernardino. NCUA responded and explained in perhaps more detail than they ever have throughout this whole process why they did what they did and when they did it. And they essentially said that they stepped in right before Arrowhead Credit Union was going to sell off quite a bit of their assets to Alaska USA. The deal that they had arranged was basically to sell off 5 of their branches in the High Desert and Big Bear, including all of those loans that were attached to those branches. What changed, essentially, is that those loans, after the NCUA stepped in, weren't guaranteed. So the Alaska USA deal, they were able to ask members, hey, do you want to stay with us, or do you want to take your money elsewhere? So that was kind of different in that whole equation, and the NCUA was saying that the prior deal really would have been detrimental to the members who remained.
Well, that's too bad, actually, because it sounded like a situation that might have been rectified if everyone would have come to the table and talked. I don't know. What do I know?
Yeah, there's a lot of things going on with that whole thing, and this was the first time that they really pointed to Alaska USA in that deal playing any kind of role.
Right. So and then finally, Ontario Airport, it's good news, kind of. I mean, they did increase their passengers, right?
Right, but it was very slight. It was only 1.36% for overall passengers, and in terms of their domestic passenger count, they were up about 3%. So it was kind of an interesting month because besides May, they have not seen any increases in passenger traffic since, I believe, early 2008. So it's been quite a few months of just consecutive losses year over year. And so this one was a slight increase, which could bode well for the rest of the year for Ontario Airport, but we'll see.
Well, Kim, thank you for getting us up to date. There's the quick and dirty on what's been going on in business in the Inland Empire Monday through Thursday. Kim did a great job with that. Thanks for that, Kim.
No problem.